Here's something that you can't do with your cell phone. Focus pulling isn't just about sharpness, it's about control. It guides the viewer's eye, builds suspense, and tells a story without a single word. In today's video, we're going to look at how to perform a rack focus. This is a very popular and creative tool used in the film industry. The movement can be easy enough to perform with enough practice. It can make your shots look intentional, professional, and cinematic. And before you practice your rack focus, just remember the wider your aperture is, the less depth of field there is. This means that with an f1.5, the focus depth will be very shallow, making it much more difficult to achieve a sharp focus on a moving subject. Now, I've already adjusted my shot for exposure, but you will want to make sure that you set the exposure before making adjustments to your focus. That's because when you open and close the aperture, the focus, or your depth of field will change. There are a few ways that we can calculate our rack focus movements. One way is to just use a little bit of gaff tape on your lens. You can place a piece of tape on the focus ring, then use a dry erase marker to mark the stops. You can also take note of the focus distance that is indicated on the lens. In this video, we're going to be working with focus peaking and a follow focus. Once you've walked through the scene and have a good idea of how movement will go, have your subject or actor start out in the first position. In this case, we're going to start out with the candle on the right. Once the subject is in place, focus your lens until the subject is in focus. With a human subject, it's important that you set the focus to their eyes. Using a dry erase marker, mark the follow focus next to the indicator. Since this is going to be the first mark, it can just be a single dot or a dash. Once you've focused on the first position, move your subject to the second position and focus your lens. For this shot, I'm going to use the green candle as our second position. When I make my mark, I'm going to mark it slightly differently so that I know which position comes in which order. If there are only two positions, then it's not a big deal. You can even use the hard stops on the follow focus or the digital stops if you have an electronic follow focus. But for this scene, I have 3 positions to mark, so I won't be using the hard stops. For this position, I'm going to be putting 2 dots so that I know this is the second position. Now that we have our first 2 positions marked, let's move on to the third. Have your subject move to the final position and then focus the lens. This time, I'm going to mark with 3 dots. Once you've marked each position, practice the entire move a few times so that you build up the muscle memory of the movement. Have your subject start back in the first position and rehearse the scene. The key to a good rack focus is that you nail each position exactly the way you have it marked every time. There shouldn't be any rocking back and forth to focus the shot. In other words, once you start the movement, the focus point needs to stop exactly where it was intended to. As I mentioned earlier, there are many times when your subject and camera will be moving, so you'll have to be flexible with the focus distance.